Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 118. I'm your host, Balsa J. Ueda, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today we're going to be talking about the world's newly announced top 8 format and our thoughts on it. Before that, you went to Calling, didn't you, Yuki?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit since we last recorded. I went to Calling Kansas City, I guess, a week and 2 weeks ago at this point. And yeah, that was a pretty good calling for me. I ended up taking Arachne Slip Through the Cracks, the exact same deck that I'd taken to Pro Tour. Admittedly, I hadn't prepped a whole lot for this calling. I was pretty much just leaning on my PT prep. I had considered playing Gravy for this event, actually, because I thought that Gravy is probably the best deck in the format by a small margin, with Arachne being second. But I didn't really get around to actually prepping very much at all. So I just ended up running back Slippy, which is fine. I really like that deck. And with the potential BNR coming up, I wouldn't be shocked to see some changes to both Gravy and Slippy. So it's kind of nice to play Slippy while he's still full power for what could potentially be the last time. We'll see. So yeah, that was fun. I ended up going 9-3, which let me cash at I believe 27th. I was X2 at the end of day one. I actually had a pretty hard day one. I really had to fight for it. I think I played like 3 or 4 Verdances, which is not a terrible matchup, but it is a little bit unfavored. And I did manage to beat most of the Verdance players, but one of the Verdances just had the classic Verdance game where they're just like, I plow under you. I scar for a scar into plow under you. I plow under you again. I felling you. Now I burn bear you after you block up my felling, and I just died super badly. So yeah, the classic Verdance, like just all their decompose lines up perfectly, and they hit all their disruption, which is really hard to keep up with. And I also lost to a Fang who drew their one of snag on my Bond's turn, which was very good, and definitely destroyed me. I think I'd probably win that game if they don't have the snag in that spot. I also think I maybe made a bit of an error on that turn where I could have played towards arsenaling a mantle and bonzing again on the following turn, but I kind of screwed up the ordering on my reactions and didn't set up that play as well as I could have. So yeah, that was kind of like my day one. And then day two, I got a lot of better matchups, but I did lose my very first round to a Gravy. They played very well. They kind of just hit the tipple into ally and conquered in the right spots, shutting down like a really big saver turn I had with their Conqueror. And yeah, so I kind of got buried in that game, and then I played some pretty good matchups for me, like Syndra, Cilio type stuff, to close out the day, and I ended up, cashing at X3, and overall pretty happy with that weekend. So that's more or less what I've been up to in Flesh and Blood. We are in a bit of a down season, but if you're interested in checking out the Slippy list, it is over on our Patreon, patreon.com/onthebobble. You can purchase the deck list or the sideboard guide, the how to play guide or the sideboard guide on the Patreon. They're individual kind of purchases, or you can subscribe to Titanium Bobble or higher and get all of that content as well as all the other content on the channel. So if you want to check that out, feel free to. And I guess at this moment, also, I want to thank all of our patrons who give back to the show. We couldn't do this without you, and we really appreciate all the support that you give. It really means a lot to us. So thank you so much.
Actually, this is the first time for me to actually hear how you did at Calling Kansas City. Was the trip good?
Yeah, the trip was pretty good. It was like one of the smaller trips in terms of people that I knew there, but it was still nice to see them. Went out and had barbecue. The good part was that the barbecue was very tasty, and I had a barbecue like Sunday afternoon because there wasn't, like I had finished up the Calling day 2 and the day ended a little early, so I ate barbecue around like 3. We finished at 4. And then the downside of this was that after that, I was asked to go to barbecue again for dinner with it was like a huge group of people. It was like 20 something people, all Fab players. And so I ran back the barbecue, and double barbecue in one day is a lot. I wouldn't recommend it. It was a little too much.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You You double dipped on the barbecue was a mistake. Got it.
Yeah, misplay, too much meat. I was like, I'll share a little bit. I don't know how hungry I am, and I got like a few pieces of barbecue, and then I'm like, I cannot eat more barbecue. Like this is too rich and heavy and too much meat. But yeah, no. Other than that, it was really fun. I played Gundam with a few Fab players, taught them a few friends, and also got to play Smash Palace with Bryce Platts, Ellie, and Colin Erickson, which was quite a bit of fun as well. So yeah, it was like a pretty fun weekend, and we also spent a little bit of time in Dallas just visiting family. So that was good.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That sounds great. As for myself, nothing too much. I played a crack shuffle play skirmish. All I can say about the format is, oh my god, it is a grindy guardian mirror no matter what you do. And it's novel, is what I'm gonna say. I don't think I can say I will recommend this format, but if you want to play it once or twice, it's kind of fun to do so. So yeah, I would recommend going to like a skirmish for crack shuffle play. Definitely not an amazing experience. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I sort of had a similar thing. I think if you were like scrutinizing it through like a competitive lens, is probably not ideal, but it is pretty fun. There is still, of course, like your flesh and blood skills being tested, and there's just like some wacky stuff that can happen in that format. Like some very funny points of variance. Like there's all the like armor clashes that like can -1 counter their armor, and sometimes you're just like, Clash of Arms or whatever it's called, and you look and they go, oh yeah, they have an arm piece, excellent. um, there's a lot of stuff like that. I also remember I got like Dominate 15 happened to me, so there like are powerful things that can happen, but yeah, the format's kind of wild.
Yeah, going back to the Clash of Arms stuff, those things are pretty good too, because it still puts the -1 counter on their arm piece if you win the clash.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the funniest moment was in one of my skirmishes, my opponent played Hope Merchant Hood, and we're just talking about, wow, this card's actually just actively awful in this format. And then they played the Clash block card that's Clash, the one that compared headpieces, and then I just go, oh my god, this is why Hope Merchant Hood's here, because it doesn't matter if it gets a -1 counter. There are better ones like Gauntlet. What is that gauntlet called? The +2 gauntlet. That's also in the
Oh
set.
yeah, that one is broken. The Battle Warren one, you can
No,
pay
no,
3 to get +2.
no, no. The one from WTR. It just gets +2
Oh,
power.
Goliath Gauntlet. Yeah, that one's also really good.
Yeah, Goliath Gauntlet works great with this Clash card. Same with a Hardened Cross Strap works great with the Chess Clash card. So
Mhm.
like, I there's some interesting synergy that happens when you open this like rare, the compare chess piece ones. Man, when you don't get to draft it, it's so much worse.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I think part of the, I guess, fun, or this is part of it, was when we were playing, we didn't look at our cards. Like we were intentionally like, okay, you can't look at your cards. So just like it'd just be like, clash of whatever. I see. So there was a bit of like, maybe I should block with my equipment so I don't lose it. Of course, you can still get like the -1 life if you don't have an equipment. So it's not like blocking necessarily fully protects you from the effect, but you would use your armor a little bit more liberally because you're just like, I don't know, I might have a clash card in here. It's hard to say.
I think in the rules it says you're not supposed to look at the packs,
Okay.
but it's kind of hard to enforce. So I don't know. I don't think people were too worried about that rule.
Yeah, yeah. I was just like playing with friends, so it was pretty easy for us to be like, don't don't look, okay? And we're both like, yeah, okay, because we weren't like moving around tables or whatever. So
Hmm. The other thing is that you can always rebuy your packs after every round.
Mhm.
And there was a couple of people at our skirmish that would just like win or lose, they didn't care. They just wanted to open more products, so they just like kept on buying new packs. So it was pretty good.
That's so funny. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, so it was a fun format. That's what I can say is it's as a skirmish, I kind of like it that it's like not high stakes and you can just like have fun with it. And I think for a format to have fun with, it was a really good setup. I wouldn't recommend it in a competitive setting.
Yeah, I think that kind of matches my experience. And I guess really briefly, I'll say that Smash Palace was surprisingly fun. I did play the TCC, the round the table like UPF product a little bit, and I thought that was okay. I enjoyed it, but I thought it was just okay. But I actually think Smash Palace is considerably better than that, and a big reason for that is they introduce an event deck where you draw a card from the event deck at the start of each person's turn, and it just has some random effect. And some of them do like almost nothing, and some of them are just like the player with the lowest life draws a card, or like there's just some like really swingy effects in it, which I think for a UPF kind of format is pretty fun and a pretty big win, because you just like have this moment where like you get down to the last two players and it's like one person's clearly favored, and then like the other person is just like, I gotta like draw two cards this turn for no reason, and suddenly it's like, oh, like it's an actual game. And so I thought that that was like a nice point of texture for like a fun kind of multiplayer silly format. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Okay, so they added variance into a casual format. Great. I think that's a great way to make a game more interesting.
Yeah, and the way some of the things like interact with each other is pretty cool. Like there's a character that clashes whenever she attacks, and if she wins the clash, I forget. Like there's, I think like somebody gets a seismic surge and she gets +1 while attacking somebody with a seismic surge, something like this. And there's also a character that can like choose to give somebody +1 on their clash, and I think if that person wins, you like get a, I don't know, you get something. You might get like a gold. I think you get a gold. So there's like some, just the way the characters interact with each other was like also pretty. It felt more interesting than TCC, where you're kind of doing your own thing. I kind of felt like you had to play the whole board a little bit. So yeah, if you're looking for like kind of a fun multiplayer experience to introduce to like maybe people who haven't played that much Flesh and Blood or are on the more casual end, I actually do think Smash Palace is a pretty good experience. So yeah, I had fun with it.
Then let's move on to our main topic for today. So we're going to be talking about the World's 2025 format. Well, maybe not the format, but just basically the top eight. But before we talk about the top eight, we'll quickly run down what the format actually is. So Worlds is going to happen in
November.
November. Thank you. Worlds happening in November is going to consist of 9 rounds of CC and 6 rounds of LL, and into a cut to top eight. And in the cut to top eight, it's going to be a best of three format. And we'll go into details a little bit later. But I guess to start with, 9 rounds of CC, 6 rounds of LL, 15 rounds total. Um, CC is getting more of the focus here for this tournament. What do you think about it?
I think to some extent that kind of makes sense. So really what they've done here is they've kind of just replaced the 6 rounds of draft with 6 rounds of LL, which is like an easy change to make. But of course, there is argument that they could shake this up. Like they could do 8 and 7, for example. There's no reason it has to be distributed this way. Draft kind of always has to be 3 rounds or multiples of three. So they could easily have mixed this up. They chose not to. I think with LL being still a little bit like a format that's in its infancy and a little bit experimental, I'm okay with this. It kind of makes sure that more of the weight is on the more kind of like tried and true format in the form of CC. So I actually like this. Although I do think in the future, if this goes well, people like LL, and this is a thing that gets repeated in the future, I could see them shifting towards like 8 and 7, more equal weighting.
Yeah, that would make sense. I would even like prefer like maybe even 8 and 8. That would be pretty cool. Where it's like 8 rounds of CC, 8 rounds of LL, and then cut the top eight, 16 rounds total. It's not too much more work to put an extra round in.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, definitely something they can tinker with. But I think for the first time they're doing this, then the 9 rounds of CC is good. I like it.
I think the one other thing to just touch on real briefly is that this confirms it: no draft, no limited for basically the whole Super Slam set until the release of the next set.
Yeah, this is we talked about this quite a bit, like speculating on this being the case, and obviously we're disappointed. We love limited and we'd like to see it. So hopefully this is not like all events going forward kind of thing. And hopefully draft will appear at least some of the time. I think if they want to do like a mixture of the three formats and kind of do different combinations of all of them, that seems pretty good to me, assuming that LL works out, of course. But I hope that draft isn't gone, because I think that's a big reason why I got into Flesh and Blood in the first place, was that draft was part of the ecosystem. And coming from Magic, I was actually primarily a limited player in Magic, and so that was a big draw to the game for me. And I like CC a lot, but I'd be really sad if draft was not part of the competitive ecosystem anymore.
Mm-hmm. Same, very, very much so. Same. Okay, but we talked about that enough last week, and so we'll move on and just like explain the top eight system. So these are best of three. And top eight is still single elimination, but instead of basically all of the Swiss rounds, which are best of ones, I'm going to read out exactly how LSS wrote it on their article. So it'll be top eight matches have no time limit. Players are expected to play at a reasonable pace, and they can be given a slow play penalty. Game one. The player with the higher standings in the Swiss portion of the event chooses whether to select the format, or they may defer that choice to their opponent. The player who does not select the format decides whether to play first or second. In Game 2, is played in the format that was not chosen for Game 1. The player who did not win Game 1 decides whether to play first or second. And then Game 3, if necessary, the player who did not win Game 2 chooses the format for Game 3, or they may defer that choice to their opponent. The player who does not select the format decides whether to play first or second. So essentially, what's happening is if you have the higher seed, you get the choice of either the format or if you want to go first or second. And then game two, you have to play the other format, and then the loser gets to decide first or second. And then in game three, the loser of game two gets to decide if they want to choose the format or be able to choose going first or second.
Yeah. So in practice, this sort of means the higher seed gets to determine if they want to play a certain format twice, because they can choose the format on the first game, and then if there is a game three, they will have lost. I guess they will not necessarily have lost game two, but okay, maybe that's like not always the case. But
yeah, it doesn't. It matters who loses game two. So
yeah,
the if you win game one, you won't be able to play the format that you want to play in game three.
no, it's the other way. If you lose game one,
No, but if you lose game one and win game two, then you don't get to.
your opponent gets to choose.
Your opponent gets to choose. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're right.
So if you win game one, you get to dictate either the format or the turn order on game three, your choice. And if you lose game one, then your opponent gets to choose. So yeah, it's definitely like an interesting format and something that we haven't exactly seen before in Flesh and Blood. I think including both CC and LL is pretty cool for a like fully constructed event. It really is shining a spotlight on both formats being important, which is nice. There are some kind of like ramifications of this. I guess we can kind of, that's kind of what we're going to be digging into. So
where do you want to start first then?
Yeah, first off, like, do you like the idea of best of three in top eight?
I think it's a great idea. Honestly, if they have like not LL and they choose Blitz instead, I would be pretty okay with it as well. I think just like having best of three in like our card game setting is just always like a feels good moment. I think like in Magic the Gathering, I think Worlds and PT, at least top eight, I think they is now doing top best of five, which will definitely not work in Flesh and Blood for time reasons, but they have gone in and chose to play more games to play the single elimination matches. And I think it's just a good thing to be able to play more games and reduce that variance and the feels bad, because like you work so hard to make top eight of this event. You work so hard to even get to this tournament. You work even harder to top eight this event. And then losing to variance always feels bad. And because we're playing a card game, there's always is some variance. I think being able to reduce that variance a little bit and at least, not die to some random mishap that occurred once is a great thing.
Yeah, I really really agree with this, and I guess for context, Magic is usually best of three in Swiss, so going up to a best of five is kind of similar to us going up to a best of three. Um, and yeah, I think reducing this kind of like randomness or swinginess of top eight feels really really nice, and even splitting it between formats is kind of nice. In Barcelona, I sort of had the experience of being X1 through Swiss and first seed going into top eight, and then just kind of exploding to a FI. He drew his blues in the right spot. I played my CLF at probably not the turn I should have played it. I think it wasn't like strictly wrong to do it there, but I think it would have been better to wait a turn. And I was just kind of like out. And it didn't feel like super super good. I was obviously like very happy with top eight, but it did kind of feel bad to be like I was X1, I had barely lost a game, and then it's just like, oh, get to top eight, Fi explodes you, goodbye. So I think that if that event had that been like best of three, I think that would have been a way more positive experience for myself. Regardless, like even if I still lost, I think I would have had a more satisfying loss knowing that I had like a best of three to play rather than a best of one. So yeah, I do think from like a player experience standpoint, that's kind of nice.
I think one other thing would be this format. I think I wouldn't have liked it if it was just CC. I kind of like it that it's a mixed format like this because if it's just CC and then you have to play the same matchup 3 times, it might be a little bit worse, mostly if it's like a lopsided matchup where now you can't even just get lucky to win that game. It's kind of doomed for one player if it's like, like an 80-20 matchup or something like that. They'll feel quite doomed.
Yeah, so like that's something that some of our listeners brought up as a question, and sort of part of what prompted this episode is that if you have a polarized matchup, you need to potentially win that matchup twice. So like if it's an LL matchup, you potentially have to win it twice. Although not always, as we discussed, depending who wins which game, you could be in a spot where you only have to win it once, which I think helps kind of reduce this potential problem. But basically, like the math on it is like if you're a 30% to win a matchup, this 30-70. If you want to win that matchup once, you're 30%. But if you need to win it twice, you need to win 30% and 30%, which is like a 21%. I guess you have like a best of three, so it's not exactly that, but it ends up being much harder to win twice than it is to win once if the matchup is significantly slanted one way or another. So I do agree that if this is all CC, it feels a little worse, and getting to split it between formats helps a lot. And also potentially like if somebody knows they have a favorite LL matchup and they're the higher seed and they go, I want to play LL first, so I have a higher chance of playing 2 rounds of LL. They at least don't get to choose the turn order as well. So we've seen some examples of like, for example, in CC, like Slippy Syndra is a pretty good matchup for Slippy, but when Syndra goes second, it's actually kind of close. So I think there will be some matchups that are a little bit lopsided that just by virtue of like the person choosing the format not choosing the turn order might make them not feel quite so bad.
The only time this could be really bad is like, I guess, if going first or second just doesn't matter in that matchup, and it's like, oh, it's like this LL matchup where it's like a 0-100, doesn't matter if they go first, second. The moment they choose LL, the matchup's kind of determined.
Yeah, if you have like Prism Oldhim or something, like maybe this doesn't save you, but also if you have Prism Oldhim and you're playing that as the sole format, you're like just as doomed. So I don't know. I think overall this is pretty nice, and I think for the most part it will reduce variance. Yeah.
The thing that I'm kind of excited to see, or just I don't know if I'm excited to see this, but definitely excited to talk about it, is that if there's if a matchup in top eight is like 2 players that brought like 2 fatigue decks in both CC and LL. So we get to watch like 6.5 hours worth of just like fatigue matchups going at each other, an untimed best of three. I think that's like worst case scenario for stream wise, but man, I would love to watch that.
So if you're Jay, this is upside. I think for a lot of people, this is downside. Yeah, there's potential for you're playing. People are playing potentially 9 untimed rounds, and if you start getting some long matchups in there, especially if you start playing them twice or you have long matchups in both formats, the day could get really, really long. This could be challenging logistically, just like the hall eventually has to close and the day could go super, super long. So they really will have to watch for slow play, I think. And of course, coverage. You mentioned the scenario where they have those people on stream and you have to watch this fatigue grind fest. And then, of course, the alternative is you don't put those players on stream, but the downside is then you could have a lot of dead air time where you're waiting for the next match. I kind of think back to like when I won calling Hartford. I played my semis. I won. Sorry, I played my quarters. I won. I was waiting for semis. That was between a. I think it was between like a Victor and a Kasai. It was Guardian Kasai for sure. So I was there just kind of waiting for the match. On the other side of the bracket, like Kano and KO won their matches. They played their semis match. And then like Majin Bey on Kano is just like waiting for his finals match. And my semis match hasn't even finished because the quarters match is still being played. And like, yeah, you just like have that to the extreme with best of three and some potential like really grindy matchups happening. So yeah, definitely a bit of a potential tournament logistics nightmare. I think that's like the one of the dangers of this setup.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think one way to fix at least the stream portion, super easy fix. You have a backup game, and you put the super fatigue matchup as the backup game. So every time someone finishes on like the the main game is done, they just go to the backup until they set up the next main game, and then they'll come back to it. Like that's how like Magic does it, where they have like four feature matches or something going at least the at the PT level, and then they just go back and forth between games to basically to kill the dead time. And they actually might need to do this for coverage reasons because untimed matches can and best of three can potentially take hours and hours, right? Like imagine a new mirror, like my new mirror against Pawn College at Battle Hardened Portland, I think it was, like took like over an hour and a half, I think. And that was like we both got slow play warnings in spots that like I didn't think that we were playing slow at all, and but the judges were like, "We need this game to finish, so we have to apply these slow play warnings, or else like it'll take 2.5 hours, right?"
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. So yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's I would imagine that's probably what they'll do now that you say it. So there is a way to fix that coverage aspect of it at the very least. Yeah, and then there of course is the other side of playing 9 rounds. I guess like there's like the player experience side for the people in top eight. I think overall I'm kind of a fan of this. Something that people might not realize is the way that top eights have been set up previously, where they stream the matches one by one and it's all best of one, is there ends up being a lot of downtime between rounds for players. I'm gonna put downtime like air quotes downtime because um, you don't really sit there like there's a lot of nerves, there's the matchups, you might be sitting there like playing games with friends trying to like prep the matchup and learn the matchup and see what insights you can get, so you're actually still playing flesh and blood, but like you are just kind of like waiting. And yeah, my experience in top eight and having that downtime was that I don't know if I actually liked it that much. So I think reducing this downtime and having it be more of like a regular tournament flow where you're mostly playing your rounds, I think, at least for me, feels better. And you could argue it's like a little more fatiguing potentially, but also, as I said, I think most people are playing quite a bit between the rounds anyways. So I'm not sure that this format actually has the top eight players playing less flesh and blood than they would otherwise.
That makes sense. I think, yeah, I guess now that you say it, it would make a lot of sense that they wouldn't stream every single top eight game. That would be impossible, right, with this format.
I think so. Yeah, it's just there's just too many games. I don't think they can cover everything, but I think what you said is probably true. They'll probably like they'll probably film like 2 of the quarterfinals matches, 2 of the semifinals matches, and well, I guess both of the semis final matches, and then the finals. That would be my guess, and then kind of jump between the 2 quarters and jump between the 2 semis, depending on how the rounds are going. Because I think you're absolutely right. You could have some really long matchups, and of course, you can have some really fast matchups too, right? Like if you have like Dio versus Kano in LL, like that's not going to last long. And that's only one of the 3 games, but yeah, it can. I think it can go very fast, and it can also go hours. So having some flexibility in there seems really nice.
Do you have any thoughts on what your strategy is gonna be? Because like obviously you don't really need to have a strategy for this until you make the top 8. Do you have any strategies in mind like right now that you've read this? Because like, do you think it's better to choose the format or do you think it's better to choose first or second? Obviously, like not knowing the matchup is kind of hard, but if both kind of matters, which one do you think you're gonna gun for, or like you're thinking about more?
I think it will really, really depend on the matchups that you have. I have thought about this a little bit. So I think if you have a particularly favored matchup and you are the higher seed, that's probably quite good for you. So if you get a play like the extreme would be like Prism Guardian and LL, or like even like right now, like if you have like Gravy Verdance as a matchup, like you probably want to choose the matchup. So I think if you have like a really extreme matchup, choosing that matchup, especially if you're very confident you can win it, is a great way to put yourself ahead, because if you win that round, then you can do the same thing in round 3. Even if you lose the other format, you can guarantee that you get another crack at that same format. So if you're super confident you can win that format kind of regardless of turn order, I think that you should do that. And if you think that the matchups are relatively close, like very 50-50, but the turn order does matter, I think you should probably elect for turn order. So if you don't have like a strong preference between the formats, they're both pretty close matchups. Like maybe you have like two pretty close aggro mirrors in both formats. Then choosing the turn order would definitely be preferable. But I don't know if there's like, I don't think there's necessarily like a blanket answer. I think it probably really depends on the decks you have and also the matchups that you have into your opponent.
Because like for example, let's say that your like CC matchup is more favored, let's say, but then you have to go first in both your CC games if you choose CC, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big downside, at least in my opinion.
Yep, I agree.
Because like not every matchup is like just because like the matchup is like so doomed for one side. If the player is playing like close to like an aggro mid-range style deck, going first, going second is like a pretty big advantage, right? And that was like a really big reason to like have a higher seed going into the top 8 for like honestly any tournament, was so that you can go second in a lot of the matchups. But now like there's this wrench that you might have to choose the format instead. And then obviously if you just win both game 1 and game 2 it won't matter, but the scenarios where you have to play the third game and you kind of have to go first, right? Like that's kind of like my image right now, is that like if you wanted to play LL as a format, you're like guardian into, let's say, aggro and LL, but you have to go first in both of those games. That's not like a great spot to be in for the Guardian player. Like if let's say I was playing Victor to Syndra or something. If Syndra gets to go twice, 2 times against me, I feel like I lose a good portion of one of those games.
Yeah. So I think this will kind of like even out a lot of potential bad matchups, which I think is actually like kind of a good thing. Like I think you kind of want it to be close. So I think that's good. And I think which one to choose will be really interesting. Something that I think is going to be important for people prepping for this Worlds event is I think understanding the difference between first and second on like a quantifiable like numbers level is going to be really important, because I think prior to this it's sort of like you just need to know like, should I go first or should I go second, and that's kind of it, because at the end of the day, like, you either get to choose or you don't get to choose. So as long as you know which one's better, how much better it is it doesn't factor into your decision making at all, and it doesn't really help you, because you're either playing first or second. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think for this format, understanding how favored you are in a matchup depending on the turn order um, is going to be a really important piece of knowledge to have, because it will help you make those decisions about should you be choosing the format or should you be choosing first or second. So that's like one thing that does strike me, and it's maybe something that people are going to have to adjust to in their testing a little bit, because it's typically not something that we're super interested in, right?
Yeah. For still, even for the average person, it just doesn't matter. Like, it's only if you make the top 8 of this specific tournament that it would matter.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, for all the Swiss rounds, it's not a factor, but you know, um, it's probably something you can think about. And if you're recording your testing matches and the results, for example, you might want to pay attention to like how much does first and second swing things in these types of questions. But yeah, I think there'll be some really interesting decisions made around what people choose in this best of three.
It's gonna be something that you have to do before the tournament, or like it's just like you're not gonna have enough time to like punch in all these numbers after you top eight, right? So like this has to be a decision that's like kind of comes into effect before you register your decks at the at the start of day one. So this has to be in the tournament prep section.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of on that note, I think there's going to be a little bit less of the you get open deck lists, you get to like prep games into your opponent. Maybe you have like a couple friends or some teammates or something that are helping you prep, or maybe even playing the matchup and giving you kind of their notes on the matchup when you don't have time to play. All of that kind of gets harder because, for one, rather than three opponents' decks, there's six opponents decks, as well as like different formats. So there's just like more to test and more to cover if you want to look into each opponent's deck list. And for two, you're probably playing your top 8 games throughout most of the day, right? Because like you have best of 3, then you might have to wait a little bit for your opponent, but you're going to have another best of 3, and you're going to want to make sure that you've gotten a chance to have food or whatever in between. So I think in general, people are going to be going in maybe like slightly more blind than they have in the past. I'm sure it will still be open deck lists. They'll know what's in their opponent's decks, but they won't have had quite as much time to like try and solve that matchup before they actually play it.
Mm-hmm. Something that would be interesting is if someone has a transformative. No, that's not the right word.
Yeah, transformative.
Transformative, that's the word. If they have a transformative sideboard, they could technically play like, in game 1 LL, they play like one version of the deck, and then in game 3 LL, they might play the other version of the deck. That would be a cool story to watch if it was on coverage.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I think it's like a little bit tricky where often, like if you do have a transformative sideboard, you kind of have like one style for certain matchups and the other side of the deck for the other matchups. But there could be a spot where maybe mixing it up a little bit could be advantageous. It's definitely something to keep an eye out for. But yeah, I think for the most part we won't see this, but it'd be very, very cool to see this if it does come up.
Yeah, go Prism. Whoever bring Prism to the LL format. Play Aura Prism and then play Aggro Prism. Just make it hell for your opponent.
Yeah, no, for sure. And do you think this setup changes? Do you think this influences like if you should be taking a polarized deck? Like if you have a deck that's just like really good in some matchups and really bad in some matchups, is that any better or worse knowing that it's dual format? Like assuming that you get to top 8.
I don't think it. Okay, so my first take on that question is that I don't think you should be preparing for a top 8 scenario going into a PT because of how hard it is to top 8 worlds. But if you know you're gonna top 8 for whatever reason, I think bringing a polarized deck is worse because that makes it that much harder to get higher seed than your opponent in the Swiss rounds, right? Because like unless you're like gonna get super lucky and like you're assuming you're gonna get first seed, then you want the polarized decks. But then if you bring a polarized deck, what ends up happening is you're probably gonna get in like 7-8, 6-7-8, right? Because you're gonna lose some games because you had some bad matchup somewhere in your Swiss rounds. And then if you get the lower seed, you're guaranteed to play your bad matchup twice in that scenario, right? Because if if it's a bad matchup for your opponent and they know it, they're just not gonna let you play that matchup twice. So
Yeah, unless you can like sneak out a win.
yeah, unless you like sneak out a win in game one or something.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I agree with you that people should be picking the deck that they think is just going to do the best in Swiss and kind of worry about top eight when they get there. Yeah, I do think I don't even know if it's like worse necessarily, but I think that the if you're taking decks with polarized matchup spreads, it's like amplifying the variance a little bit.
Yeah, you could fall into a spot where like the higher seeds dictates the winner of the game. Where I feel like if you bring like a flat matchup, you get to play like 3 real games of Flesh and Blood to try and get through the top eight. So I feel like the more you're confident in playing mid-range Flesh and Blood into other mid-range decks, you want to just like play good fundamental Flesh and Blood. If you're confident in beating other world's top eight players in that game, then it might be a good reason to like bring some like a deck with a really good average matchup spread, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what people wind up on, and I'm sure this is something that the top eight players will get asked about in their like top eight interviews and stuff. So that will be, I think that will be like another element that we get in coverage that we don't normally get. That will be quite fun to follow.
Yeah. I would be. I'm just interested in what the LL format's gonna look like because it feels like it's not really that explored right now. I've heard a lot of people talking about Zephyr Needle. I don't know if that card will last until Worlds, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about like Ira, Briar, Dio, new CYB new. CYB News kind of a fascinating one to me because I didn't think that that deck was like so dominant when it was in CC, but I've been hearing some people be like CYB New is so good, and I'm just like, like I wonder how that will all shake out when, like you said, the format gets really explored. Because I think right now people, I don't know if anybody, even people who have been playing the format, I don't think anybody really knows what's going on just yet. We will be getting the data from skirmishes on the final week, apparently. So that'll be really interesting to see. Because so far they've been releasing the Blitz skirmish data, which honestly looks pretty healthy. Like it's very diverse in Blitz. I haven't played it, but it looks very diverse. But I'm very curious to see what LL will look like when we see all the skirmish data as like kind of a starting point, and then we'll see more as we go into PQs, of course.
One other interesting thing just about this Worlds is gonna be calling. Calling's LL. It's not CC. I was surprised when I like skimmed through the event page just now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool to see. I think they're really trying to push LL, and I think that this is kind of the way to do it. Like, make events that people care about, get people to need to engage with the format. And I think that if you do that and the format is solid, reasonable, then I think people will come around on the format. Which is kind of what I'm hoping will happen. I think it'd be cool for Flesh and Blood to have a sort of like legacy format of sorts. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see. It will depend a lot on the execution, I think. But I sort of think that this is going to work out. I don't see a reason. I feel like there's like a lot of skepticism in the community about LL, but I personally don't really see a reason that LL can't be a real format that is, probably more broken just by virtue of like having the books and more powerful cards and heroes in it. Like almost certainly you're just going to be doing more broken things, but as long as those decks are relatively balanced into each other, I think that there's no reason it can't be an interesting format.
Yeah, I think it's not actually the problem of if the format is interesting or not, but more of the issue of like the delta between the CC and LL decks are pretty big. So what that means is that you can't just bring a CC deck to LL and play it. You do need to have an LL deck, and that requires people to have a second deck. and that's just not a viable option for like a majority of the consumers of this game. Mostly if they don't have a reason to build an LL deck, they just won't have one. And like that's the case for myself. Is the reason I don't go out to like these LL skirmishes, or I wouldn't think about it, is that it requires me to go build an LL deck and put it together, and it's just like a lot of work even for someone like me who have a good chunk of a lot of it. And I feel like if I didn't have a good chunk of an LL deck, it would be like 0% chance I would spend $500 to put together an LL deck that we don't even know if it's gonna be a mainstay. It probably will be a mainstay eventually, but at least like trying to like shell out money to put together an expensive LL deck to play for one tournament doesn't feel great to me.
That that makes sense. I can definitely see that. So yeah, it'll be curious to see kind of like what the future of L holds, and I think we'll get a better look at this soon with ProQuest and Worlds and everything. I think this will really kind of dictate whether LL sticks around or not.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess the last question to ask before we wrap up the episode is would you like this to be adopted into other tier 3 events like PTs? Like would you rather have top 8 best of 3s at like, PT Yokohama?
I think so. I mean, of course, like we need to see what happens and see if there's any issues that arise. But I think conceptually, like at least in theory, I like this and I think it's good. There is an interesting question of like, so we want draft to be back in, of course. And if you do have draft with CC or even potentially draft with LL as the format, do you want to make those constructed rounds best of 3?
No. What you do is you make people draft and then choose between their draft deck and their CC deck.
Holy, can you imagine?
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
Your first seed and you just try to train people. There's no way that this is correct, but it'd be really funny.
You try and train wreck people and then like you play CC twice?
Yes.
But then if you choose CC, you don't get to go second twice.
It's true. I don't think it's like actually a good strategy, but it'd be really funny.
I think this will be a scenario where if you have a CC deck that like doesn't care if it goes first or second, and you're just like good into the rest of the top 8, it just won't matter if you train wreck draft or not. It's probably just better to make your own draft deck better to make sure you have the best chance of winning all game 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, no, that is definitely the optimal strategy, but it'd be really funny to like watch a future draft and then the person's just like actively sabotaging the other people in the pod. But yeah, don't do that if you find yourself in that scenario. I do like that. I kind of like the idea of like doing a draft and then you choose between your CC or your draft deck though. That is kind of sweet.
Yeah, that would be sweet. I would love that actually, because like if it was me, I would no, but then I don't get to go second in draft. That's a huge difference, right? Like if you wanted to play your draft deck twice, you have to go first twice in draft, which is like way worse too.
But then if you choose CC, then in draft,
no, you don't have to choose CC. You can just go second on your first game and just don't care what format you play.
That's true.
Because you just get to select. Because like even for game 3, technically you don't even need to choose the format. You can just say I'm gonna go first or second.
Yeah, after your opponent selects the format. Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Okay, yeah, you convinced me. I was like not sure about if drafts included, but I think you're right. I don't know if they'll do it, but I would love to see them just incorporate a top 8 draft and then you play your CC and your draft deck in the same event. That honestly sounds really sweet. I wish we were doing that instead of LLCC.
Yeah, as long as the draft format's reasonable.
Yeah. Of course.
But I guess this is logistically easier to do because then you don't have to have a draft. No, it doesn't matter though. It's like doing a draft isn't actually that much more work. This choosing LLCC for a best of 3 could be more of a train wreck because some LL games can take literally forever.
Yeah. I think all in all, the the CC draft or whatever would be not really a time loss, just because the format's just like draft draft is like shorter once you get the games going. So yeah, I think that that would be really cool. So yes, I think I would like to see this get adopted, assuming that the problems with the event running long aren't so bad that they can't repeat it or something. But
Yeah. The I think the reasons why they won't be able to make it a best of three would be logistic issues more than gameplay issues or like a player experience issue. It'll most likely be like, oh my god, it's like 7 p.m. and top eight has like the finals haven't started yet. That would be the issue, the biggest issue at hand, right?
yeah, I totally agree with this.
Oh, maybe we can have finals at a Denny's or something.
Yeah, I have to imagine that LSS would not be thrilled with finals of the world championship at a Denny's streamed like on someone's phone.
That would be hilarious in its own front, but yeah, it would. I don't think it would happen, but I've heard of other card games or just events having weird things happen where they get kicked out of the venue before finals starts. So they have to play finals somewhere, and it only really takes 4 people to run an event. Once there's only 2 players left, you might need 2 judges and the 2 people playing. That's all you need.
It's true. I think it would be viewed as kind of a disaster because they usually like to do their like award ceremony and everything for the PTN Worlds, where they give out like James White gives out the trophies on the stage with all the top 8 players.
Overrated. Whatever.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll have to see. Yeah, I do think that the potential really long day is like the biggest potential threat here, but also like I'm sure they've thought about this, and my guess would be that the judges will be really on top of slow play. I sure hope so.
Dude, honestly, that would be the best case scenario. If the judges are actually on top of slow play, oh my god, this means that it will actually matter because this is still technically the same like round, right? So like if you get a slow play warning in game 1 and then game 2, it's actually going to be a penalty in game 3.
Yeah, that is true. You could accrue multiple slow play warnings across your best of three, which
I would have to assume, or I would have to, yeah, it has to be an upgrade, right? Like it has to be. Like if it doesn't upgrade, it'll be awful.
I mean, I'm not part of the judging program, so I don't really know, but it would make sense to me if it's an upgrade. That seems like surely the way that this should go.
Yeah, I don't know if the judges got input into this though when they were making this. I would assume not because maybe somebody.
Yeah, maybe like Josh Scott or whatever, like the head
Yeah,
of
maybe
the
one
program.
person, but I definitely like, nobody publicly in the judges community knew about this change beforehand, so
Yeah, I would assume that that's probably the case.
okay. I think that's everything we want to talk about. Any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's everything. So that's going to wrap us up for today. I hope you enjoy listening to our episode and us talking about, the upcoming Worlds format and all that that entails. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter. Jay is at Ueda J. I'm at Yukili Bender. I'm also on Blue Sky with the same handle at Yukili Bender. You can also email us at onthebobble@gmail.com. And, since we do have a bit of a down season in terms of limited, if you have any listener questions and you have ideas for things you'd like to hear on the podcast coming up, please let us know and submit those questions through any of those avenues. And we'd love to have some community input on topics, because I think we'll probably spend a little bit of time on Super Slam Limited, but perhaps not as in depth as we usually do, unless that's what you want. So even if you really still want to hear all the how to drafts, you have draft armories locally, let us know that too, because that can influence what we do. But we are kind of looking for some feedback from people about what they'd like to hear on the show, as we are moving into a season that doesn't have competitive limited for once.
Yeah, and I think one shout out would be thank you to Patreon name was Andy Modell. He was the one that at least put it up on our Discord that this could be an interesting episode as well. So yeah, honestly, Discord works great for us too on our Discord or yeah, anywhere. And that would influence literally episodes that will come out in the future.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, we encourage you to do so. And thank you all for listening. We will see you all next time. I actually have a sign off.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Um, so this has been happening for a little while. Basically, at some point, they started capping battle hardens because I think they didn't want it. Same issue that we were talking about in the episode. Actually, they don't want it to run too long, and we were having situations where like the extreme of this is like in the battle harden that I won with calling Hartford. By the time I won, I remember like I won my match. The judge started walking away, and I'm like, wait, where do I get my gold foil? And he looks around and he's like, that's a really good question because literally, even like the prize stage and everything was packed up. Like everything was packed up. Like we went so late that like the entire venue was basically torn down. They had basically kicked like almost everybody out of the venue. And like I didn't even know where to go to get my gold foil. So they've decided that this is bad, which is super reasonable, and they've started capping battle hardens so that they don't run too long. I think they cap it at whatever the cutoff for 7 rounds is. The downside of this is like in London, I didn't get to play the LL Battle Harden because I didn't sign up. I tried to go like day of in the morning and sign up, and they're like, nope, sorry, it's already full. And this problem has gotten even worse. In calling Kansas, I saw basically after the final round of the calling ended, there was like a swarm of people that went, or I guess it would have been final round of day one of the calling ended, because then you know if you're going to play day two of the calling or the battle hardened. There's basically like a swarm of people going up trying to sign up for the event, and I don't know about the proportions, but a good number of those people trying to go up as soon as the round two, like the final round of day one ended. A good portion of those people didn't get to play the battle hardened. It was already capped and already full, which is kind of problematic. Like, so I guess like for the immediate future, if you really want to play the battle hardened, you should probably sign up and then try to get a refund if you can't play it, which is just going to make the whole problem worse.
Yeah, that would create feels bad moment for people who go up to the event after the rounds are over, try and sign up. They'll be like, "Oh, it's sold out," and then Battle Hardened starts and there's like 50 spots open.
Yeah, so I think we have a problem here, and I think that they need to like actually do something about this, because I think as people become more and more aware of this problem's only going to get worse. So I would really like to see them like fix this in some way. It's kind of like the same as like the Bandai problem that I was talking on another sign off, where just like the events are too full and you can't sign up for events and you can't get in for events because it's too popular. It's just like you really want people to be able to play your card game when they want to. And actually do have a suggestion. I forget. I heard this from a few different people, so I'm gonna omit credit, but I heard a suggestion of maybe we can move towards, rather than having a battle hardened, do like 2 PQ pluses and then just like randomize which event you get into after everybody's signed up, so that it doesn't take any longer, but you have more space for people, and the pricing is like not, the LSS doesn't have to like double the pricing.
Well, yeah. Well, they'll double the pricing. It's just
Well, but PQ plus is smaller pricing than battle hardened.
oh, that's what you mean. Okay, okay. I see. I see. Honestly, I don't think it's the issue if they have to double the pricing if they double the people that's playing.
Yeah, or that, or just run 2 battle hardens. I think that's like also an option. But yeah, I would like to see them maybe like run 2 of these events. Maybe not like every event, but certainly at the majors where, like Philadelphia comes to mind. There's going to be a lot of people at Philadelphia. Usually the PTs and Worlds are really, really big. And I think that this was a problem at calling Kansas City, which we played 12 rounds, so it wasn't the biggest calling. I think we had like 400 something people. Um, but you can only imagine how much worse this problem is going to get when you have a big event like Worlds Philadelphia. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the other issue here is that the side events on Sunday usually are lacking,
Hmm.
which typically means that you like the best event to play ends up being the battle hardened.
Hmm.
So like, you either play the battle hardened or the gold foil commoner event, and you know, there's not much else going on Sundays. And that there's gonna be a bunch of people who's like not playing day two of a calling. There needs to be they could just like make another different event that's not like the battle hardened that's like as enticing to play
Hmm.
as the battle hardened essentially. Something that's like interesting, maybe they could make a LL gold foil event as well on the side or something and make it like CC the main format or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could be not running two battle hardens, but just kind of like expanding the offers on the Sunday. When you say that, I also kind of had the thought that you could do like I remember at like US Nats, for example, and Canadian Nationals, actually, they had like the WCQ event, which was like sealed high seas with top eight draft, and the winner gets a qualification for um, the next Worlds as well as a gold foil. That could be like a type of event that you could run on the Sunday as well, so that you don't get into the battle hardened. Well, you can play the sealed WCQ, or you can play the LL gold foil event, or yeah, just having more options for people would definitely be another way to solve the issue.
Yeah, or even imagine this actually. Imagine a battle hardened, and then if it caps, there's a PQ on the side or something. That'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of ways that they could do this, but basically the situation where you finish your last round of the calling, you go sign up for your plans on Sunday right away, and it's already sold out is like not not good. It's not
Mhm.
really like acceptable. Like, um, if I'm especially if I'm somebody that travels to like one or two events per year, and this happens, like that would feel. I would be pretty disappointed. Like maybe if it's a cool place, you can go do some tourism, and like that's fine. But if you're really hoping to play Flesh and Blood, like you should be able to play Flesh and Blood and have some good options on a Sunday. So yeah, there's a few ways they could tackle this, but I just wanted to bring it up because it's a problem that I saw starting in London, and it's gotten worse, and it doesn't feel like a problem that's going to get better. It feels like a problem that's only going to get more extreme as people probably start signing up for these events a little more aggressively.
Yeah, yeah. The bigger the game gets, the worse this problem will get. So, definitely going to be creeping up on the in the severity of issues very quickly, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good spot to wrap it up then. Thank you for listening, guys.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. Bye for now.